Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. We keep the conversation going here in Nigeria. In 2015, the concluding part of the 2015 general elections been wrapped up, and welcome everyone to the program, our viewers here and around the world. I am Bosin Amofaye, and here we continue the business, economy, investment, and finance part of the entire Nigeria 2015. So let's introduce the panel that you see in a short while. Well-balanced panel, if you want to put it that way. And I'm starting from my immediate left, Professor Pat Utomi, a politician and economist. He's also a professor of economics at the Pan-African University and the Lagos Business School. Professor Utomi, thanks for coming. We appreciate your time. He's also the author of the book, Why Nations Are Poor. He will talk a little bit more about that, why nations fail. He's got some thought for us on that. My anchor, my co-anchor and guest host on the show this morning, Harriet Agbeyi, is also here in the studios. Good morning, Harriet.
Good morning, boss.
Bright and early Monday to you. Harriet will be taking a look at the market as it were. A very interesting business week start today. In case you're unaware or you've gotten overwhelmed by the elections of 2015, the DMO will do a 71 billion naira bond auction later this week, and of course on Friday the March inflation report. Take your pick what will happen. That's also on tap. And at the tail end of this table, Nyota Egbe, a Channels TV anchor and producer. Nyota, good morning.
Thank you.
As usual, it's good to have you here, be part of the business of politics.
I actually wonder why you had to bring me here when the prof is here. I mean, economists and
I got my producers who decide what I do and say here on the program.
Well, tell your
They're
producers
the ones. Ayola is in
tell the
charge.
producers the next time the professor is coming, I want to be the one.
Ayola is. Let's get the conversation started. So we've got the 2015 election, state governors elections in 29 states. The results are coming in, and you've seen the major upsets since 1999. You have the new ruling party at the center now controlling most of the state governments polls coming in. That's something to talk about. Professor Pato told me 2 weeks ago, talked to us about leading for change. That was at the federal level. That's 24 hours before the March 28th presidential elections. And now he'll be talking to us more about the flip side of that as at the state level. How do you bring leading for change from the presidential or the federal level and trickle it down to the state levels? And now bringing in my co-anchor Harriet to fire the shots, as it were. Let's get started.
Listen, we're not doing any firing now, but we're leading for change, which is very important. I remember when we first had this conversation, when you had a conversation rather with Professor, talking about leading for change at the federal level, so many things came up to play. Now we're talking about 29 chief executives of the states. And we're talking about consolidating in most cases, and in other cases, putting aside some of the policies that have come up and running with some new others. So, Professor, my first shot, according to Bosin, will be this morning. In terms of leading for change, what should these state executives begin to focus on?
Well, first of all, I think that the part that politicians enjoy the most has passed, winning elections. But that's not the most important part. The most important part is governing, and it's not the easy part. But it is that part that ensures you can win the next election, especially now that Nigerians are weak to the fact that they can get rid of governments that don't perform. So the chief executive has to first have a vision of where he wants to take his state. If you have a clear sense for where you want to take your state, you must ask, who are the people who can work with me to get it there? What are the resources that I need to get it there? Now, when we come to the states, there's some very, very fundamental issues that must be engaged. In my opinion, part of the failure of the Nigerian state today is the failure of the subnational level of government. The states have not been what the regions were in the 60s. And that's why the country has not made the kind of progress that it must make. The states have become so prebendal. They just wait there, go for the FAC account meeting, get some money, do whatever little bits they can. They've not done enough to be builders of nations. And this must change now. So every person who has won an election over this weekend must say today, this is not a party, this is work. And they must begin to think, how can I take the state to this place that I envision?
Prof, you said the party is over. Now the party has to perform. You talked about the regional states in the 60s, so before we went into massive privatization, or if you call it commercialization of state creation process. Now, what were those processes that made those regional states back then performing, as it were, that you said today we've lost that touch, as it were?
A good part of it, and this is really part of what makes a federation, is the competition between subnational governments about who will most bring progress to their people. Back in the 50s and 60s, and I'll give you a couple of examples that just set this going. How did Nigeria begin to get industrialized? At the dawn of self-government, before independence, if you go to Pius Okibo and Nigerian Public Accounts, you will see an accounting of all of that. The marketing boards had built up significant reserves for the regions. Between 1957 and 1960, these reserves literally disappeared. Millions of pounds, 94 million pounds for this region, that region, in London. And when I ask students deliberately, what happened to the money? And they react with the eye of today's Nigeria and say, they chopped the money. Of course, it wasn't true. The states or the regions realized that colonial administration did not industrialize Nigeria. They wanted to get Nigeria moving forward much faster than the colonial government had. And Premier of Western Region was the lead in ensuring that he created an industrial estate, brought investors, canvassed around the world to bring investors. That industrial estate is not too far from here, called the Ikeja Industrial Estate. Now, but once the Premier of Western Region moved, the Premier of Eastern Region responded doubly, Aba, Port Harcourt. The Premier of Northern Region responded with the Kakuri layout for textile industries mainly. In this competition, next level, your business, television, favorite example. First television station in all of Africa was in Ibadan, Government of Western Region. WNTV, as I lived in Ibadan in the 60s, the payoff line used to be WNTV, first in Africa. Once they moved with that, knowing that there was television, by the way, in Ibadan before there was in Brussels, there's the speed with which the regional governments were moving in Nigeria. Once Chivawolo moved to Western Region, the Premier of Eastern Region responded.
Makopara.
Yes, Opera. And what was their own payoff line? Ibadan was first in Africa, Enugu was second to none. And so this competition,
Healthy competition,
very
I'd
healthy
like to call
competition.
it.
Not payoff line, not payoff like seat of power.
you know. So you see, and I can give you several other examples of how this grew with agriculture, Okpara's vision of an egg for a penny. So that in 1964, Dr. Michael Okpara could boast deservedly that if you excised Eastern Region from the Nigerian Federation, it would be the fastest growing economy in the world.
Professor, let's fast forward to now.
Yes.
Then seemed quite interesting and even more entertaining if you'd like to look at it that way. But where we are right now and where the states are coming from, it's a little bit more challenging. You mentioned the fact that it seems, well, that's what everybody always says. The states always wait, cap in hand, for FAC allocations to come in. A lot of convos have been going on about internally generated revenues. That's just, for the long term, if you'd like to look at it that way. But these people are looking for short to medium term fixes, quick fixes, if you'd like.
You've got to have a mix. If you don't begin to look long term now, you will never get there. But you've got to make people get some feel good. And what are those feel good things that you have to go for, the low hanging fruits? There are quite a number, especially in the area of creating jobs. Look, we can turn to, if we are more frugal, stop all these wasteful displays. Let me tell you, most of the governors in Nigeria, in most countries where the populace are sensitive, there will be demonstrations against them. Look at Brazil, what's going on right now in Brazil. President of Brazil served as chair of their petroleum corporation, the NNPC. Now, hundreds of thousands of people on the street demanding her impeachment because some things went wrong there. Can you imagine who would be out of work in Nigeria if we did that? A good part of the people who are there. Now, state governors who park jets that they're leasing to be able to fly to Abuja. This is nonsense. We must stop this. If we cut the excesses of these people, there will be enough money to in fact start basic things that will create jobs, that would essentially stimulate infrastructure, that will employ a lot of people, and you will see that those low-hanging fruits can begin to be harvested fairly quickly.
Nyota, I noticed that you're yearning to have an intervention.
Well, don't call me an interventionist. Because I'm enjoying this conversation. But there was something you said earlier when you started. You talked about vision, resources, and then competition. But let's look at the issue of resources. That's one of the things that might be a problem, because the winners of the various elections are so focused on the parties, and the Constitution says you didn't vote for an individual, you voted for a party. So right now they're coming in, they're looking at my party, the party's dream, party's manifesto, party's desire to achieve one or two goals. Then they're not even looking at the resources. Do you think they'll be willing to look at the resources, both natural and human, that may be cutting across board, not particularly in one party?
They better do. The best people are not necessarily in your party. And there's nothing wrong with going outside of your party to get the best people to help you achieve what will make your party stay in power. And if you're a leader, you'll be able to sell it to the people. See, it's not about a popularity contest. You need popularity to win elections. To lead, you don't need a popularity contest. Poor fellow that I like to refer to, Jack Welch, makes the point that the business of leading is to lead and not to win a popularity contest.
Okay, Professor, may I cut in there very respectfully? Let me lead this conversation, if you permit me, to what to do after this very important break. But we'll take a break now. When we come back, but very quick to sneak this in before our producers punch the buttons, there's a breaking news. The Nigeria Securities and Exchange Commission has released a new set of rules on demutualization of exchanges in Nigeria. We talked about that. The head of legal and director at the SEC is live with us. Ms. Anastasia Brima will join us within the hour. Keep your eyes on that conversation as well. Part of the leadership we're talking about in the capital market. We'll roll that in. We're coming to you in a minute.